Hitting record. Testing the mic. Background music on. Then we hit mute by accident. Notes up. Starting soon. Do I like these tracks? I don't know if I like these tracks. There we go. Oh, that's much better. I like that. You can hear what I'm listening to on the Lo-Fi Rides in 3, 2, and 1. Welcome to the ChiCast. My ladies, lovelies, and gents. I'm your voice of mindfulness, Marcus Julian Carbo, here at TCWM Studios in the city of brotherly love. And today I'm thinking about that very city and one of its favorite sons. That's right. Will Smith. You know it. It's everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. Last night at the Oscars, old Chris Rock made a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith, which resulted in Will slapping Chris Rock on stage during the monologue. Now, I have deliberately stayed away from all sorts of media today. In fact, the only independent media that I have ingested today was from one of my fitness channels. An excellent person to follow if you're on your fitness journey. Simon Miller. His link will be in the description. But even from his middle of the road, usually point of view, I hit the brakes. I didn't want any interference from the outside world. How else can we test our principles, our ideas, without testing them? And so, having only one or two conversations today about it, and having been left alone to my own thoughts throughout, all that I have taken in beyond that at this moment in time is Chris Rock's delivery of the joke, the ensuing conflict that comes after, the table and the stage, and of course Will Smith's acceptance speech thereafter. So here goes. That's where I'm coming from. But just based on a few things, we don't wear rose-colored glasses here at the ChiCast. I recognize certain sources of information are going to spin this topic in certain ways. I can guess how one side will go with it, and then if you simply flip it That's probably whether the other side falls on it. Well, that's why I kept these people out of my head all day. So here goes. The first thing I thought of in this was... Let's see, do I have this? Oh yeah. Have we forgotten where this man comes from? Now I understand that for the last 25 years or more, he has been your lovable comedian. But West Philadelphia, born and raised. I say this tongue-in-cheek, of course, but Philly is Philly. Small town wrapped in a big city. And this amazing beast of beauty right here, old Gritty, I'm not so sure Gritty didn't birth this city. We like to think we adopted Gritty, but yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, don't worry, we've got a cup of Chi right off to the side, but it's a little hot to go sipping just yet. So, Philly, with its reputation, with its way of doing things, is one of those cities that deserves its reputation. As one of my good New York friends says, while New York has a rep, Philly earned it. And there's real truth to oh, Philly. Now, I am saying this tongue-in-cheek. It's one of the reasons I enjoy living in a major metro area in the Northeast, because inevitably the news is going to have something to do with someone or something or some event that I'm very, very close to. So let's flip it back over for a second, and let's have a serious conversation about what it is that took place here at the Oscars. Cup of Chi. Just a regular old breakfast mug today, and I did not put any sweetener in that. That said, what happened at its base? Let's strip this down, shall we? We watched a man, in the form of Chris Rock, make a joke about a woman's decision to shave her head. That's the bare bones of it, yeah? It's granular simplicity. Oh, don't worry, because personally, I don't care why she shaved her head. It could be cancer, alopecia for another reason, could be a stylistic choice. What I know is that Jada had a conversation over many, many months, if not years, with herself, perhaps a few close people around her, maybe even jested to a few friends on that outer circle. Either way, her decision to shave her head down is a huge statement in our society. Even for a man, and I would know. I shave my head weekly. It's a big deal coming face to face with losing one's hair. But from a woman's perspective, where hair is in fact a badge of womandom, of femininity, rules they did not come up with. Rules we did not get asked about, but rules nonetheless, biases and cultural norms that shape the way we see the world and how we see ourselves. And so this woman, for whatever reason, again, I've heard a few slips of alopecia or this, but I don't care. Not on this one. Because all I care about is this point. Jada Pinkett Smith made a choice to go bald. To go down, and she's not even really bald. She goes tight. I'm so disappointed in Chris Rock. I'm sorry. It threw me off. It threw me off here. So the fact that he poked fun at her is an immediate punch down, because a woman without hair, and I've had the pleasure and honor of knowing several women who had to lose their hair over cancer treatment. And I shared space. I didn't hold it, I shared it in some of the misery the hair loss caused them. So this is immediate punch down by Chris Rock. An absolute immediate punch down. And that is enough right there to warrant an apology on his part. But now let's add in several other factors, shall we? Let's add in that it's International Women's Month, so that's on everybody's mind right now. You're in Hollywood, which, unlike most industries, actually I'm not sure. I don't want to speak out of context here. If you're listening in the comments, you want to do a little research, let us know what the demographic breakdown of Hollywood overall might be. This isn't something that I actually researched. But what I wanted to say in my notes was that you're in Hollywood, which crowns itself as being left-leaning, whatever that means to you. Being a place of creativity, openness, and acceptance. That's what they pride themselves on being, yes? So, again, we're talking about punching down in a room full of folks that, for the most part, pride themselves on not punching down, on looking out for the little guy. But the worst part is that you did it with a joke from a quarter century ago. From a quarter century ago. To put that in perspective, if it were 1997, and I'm just doing some quick math in my head, that would put you in 1962, yes? No, 1972, I'm sorry. One or the other, doesn't matter. It would put you out of touch. Now, when we then consider that the joke that you used from 25 years ago was a woman's empowerment movie highlighting the misogyny within the Marine Corps and the sacrifice of the hair to fit in, to conform, the controversies that came out of that. I was only 15, 16, 17 years old at the time when this was going on. 15, 16. Depending on what time of the year it was. And there was a statement that was made with that movie. There is historical context that comes with that movie. And so to then use it in punching down only further served to show you really hadn't considered where you were stepping. You really didn't know where you were going on this one. Ooh. That right there really, when I saw, I need a moment. I can feel the chi rising here. This is in fact why I got away from talking about politics. But this is also why I say you don't have to follow politics to follow politics, or to know what's going on in the world and have an understanding of the world you live in. I just follow celebrities. It's one of the things that I do, and I do that on purpose. The celebrities that I follow overall are the movie stars I watch, the musicians I listen to, the authors I read. And in doing that, whatever news I get, generally speaking, has to do with all of that. Now, one of those subscriptions that I have is Netflix. It's something that keeps me in the loop of what the zeitgeist is in the world. It's how we do the ChiCast. My leg, by the way, has fallen asleep. And if you listen to this at night to fall asleep, one, thank you for letting me into your dreams. But two, with my foot asleep, I'm partially joining you at least 20% of the way here. Oh. Let's see if a cup of chi will wake it back up. Now, let's be real here. Am I surprised and disappointed it escalated to violence? Of course I am. Am I mad Will did what he did? Not from a principled standpoint, no. From a PR standpoint, yes. I understand it shouldn't have gone down that way, but from a principled standpoint, no, I'm perfectly fine with it. Brought a little tear to my eye, knowing that the Philly is still in him. Is Chris Rock lucky it didn't go further? Yeah, I think that situation could have gotten out of hand very quickly. But before I go farther, what were your thoughts when you watched, saw, or heard about the encounter? Like a lot of people, I thought it was fake when I saw the thumbnail. But as soon as I saw the footage, whew, when I saw what Rock said, my heart sunk a little. I got a little angry for Will Smith. And I recognized right there, no, that's real. That's real anger. Ooh. Okay, let's finish this video. Anyway, where did you land on this? Was Will justified? Was he out of line? Both? That's possible. What about Chris Rock? Using a movie created to highlight the misogyny of the world it was created in 25 years ago. A movie which in fact spawned its own controversy about Demi Moore shaving her head was used to make fun of a woman who had shaved her head. To me, this feels out of touch, but tell me down in the comments. Give me your original thoughts, your heartfelt ideas, not someone else's. Let's chat down there and talk about this, because I think this explores that really intimate question in a very highlighted way. Yeah? What is funny? What is too far for comedians? This isn't as big of a deal, but it is of the same ilk as the Me Too movement. What is consent? What is too far? Right? There were some clear violations, and there was that weird gray area. And with certain comedians, we find ourselves in a weird gray area. I'd be interested to see how a Richard Pryor or a George Carlin would have adapted to the culture as it changed. Or would they dig their heels in the sand like a lot of comedians are doing today and just refuse to understand that time has marched on? I don't know, but tell me in the comments. Let me know your thoughts, and then be sure to like, share, and of course subscribe to the channel. Join us over on the socials. I'm gonna get this down. More practice every week for more fun throughout the week. I say to myself, point to on the screen here, we're building this on the runway. And if this vibe is hitting different, join, well, these stellar people right here over there on Patreon. We're doing uninterrupted content, behind the scenes access, special events, and more to enjoy your own episodes of your mindful fitness adventure. A big thank you to these patrons for helping us keep the lights turned on once we moved in and helping us get better to bring you more and more content that is of a mindful for the rest of us. Yeah, something like that. Join them at www.patreon.com/withmarcus. Of course, the links are in the description below. And strangely enough, timely enough, I think this week's psychology is, well, let's sit down. Let's talk about something super important, of upgrading your style. If I asked you who the world's top muscle man was, and Arnold Schwarzenegger came to mind, would I say who's the world's most handsome man? You said Brad Pitt. It's time to upgrade your style. Upgrading your style isn't about knowing what's in fashions on the top 40 or what Batman's new costume looks like. Upgrading your style is about being connected to everyone around you and to your place in history. In that upgrade, there's a letting go of ideas, clothing, of totems. Oh, I'm not going down there. Way too many mosquitoes. But none of that. Sometimes we're born into a world in which it's okay to hate. We learn, we grow, and in a single lifetime that changes. It's about evolving and being connected. So upgrade your fit. Join today. It's been 60 years since the Beatles, 30 since Nirvana. It's about not being tied down to the past, understanding that time moves on. Peace and love. Ladies, lovelies, and gents, welcome back to the ChiCast. I'm your host, Marcus Julian Carbo, and pay no attention to the rumbling sound in the background. That's just my partner coming home, and the automatic garage door lifting and lowering and all that fun stuff. I'm sure we'll be hearing her come in with the groceries and all that good stuff. We had to do a fruit run today, and she was brave enough to brave the cold here at the end of March. I have to say, this global warming thing, it's bad when you're kind of rooting for it a little in March and April. Like, would it hurry up and get warm? Not thinking, not remembering when we used to have winters, how we would get blizzards in April, that final last oof of winter. Well, keeping that in mind, I'm thankful that it is as warm as it is, but it is that yin and yang situation where, yeah, things get warmer faster, but not for any good reason. That said, if you were uncertain about where we were going next, because before we get back to the big Oscar thing that everyone's talking about, I want to talk about the new Netflix docuseries, Worst Roommate, which, strangely enough, had an episode which took place in Philadelphia and ran aground of what I had originally planned, which was to speak about this particular docuseries. So, spoiler alerts ahead. I'm going to discuss pretty much everything about the 4 or 5 episodes. And, you know, if you haven't, it's still worth a watch, even if you listen. But you haven't been warned. So, Worst Roommate Ever covers 4 tragic living situations. And while a lot of people are going to talk about trust, I suspect there might even be a little victim blaming. But there's going to be a lot of be careful who you trust. Can't trust anybody. And don't find things on Craigslist. And I gotta tell you, I only have minor regrets of finding the fabulous Odysseus Khufu on Craigslist, number 1. And number 2, as I always said, push-ups, more push-ups, would have fixed the situation. I know. What do you mean, more push-ups? Well, what I mean by that is self-focus. Okay? How does self-focus, however, help external conflicts, help you with external threats, something like what we see in this docuseries? Oof. Well, let's first take a look at the folks who committed the acts presented and how they presented to their world, yeah? So popping in here, we have Dorothea Puente. As they pop up, Jameson Bachman, right, who was a New York lawyer, supposedly. We have Yosef Kater, a Palestinian marathoner, right? Another man by the name of Casey Joy, mild-mannered, middle-aged man, right? And what do I mean by how they presented? Well, in each of them, we see a few things. In Dorothea, there's the elderly suburban granny. Goes to church, gives to charity, helping the unfortunate. She's unassuming. She's better than you or I. She goes every Sunday and volunteers during the week. And by the way, she's so old. Nimble, but old. And Casey Joy, mild-mannered, middle-aged man, very quiet, they say. But without really knowing anything, after the deed is done, part of what throws off suspicion on him, or at least slows the cops down, is the fact that he has a language barrier. And then Yusuf, this Palestinian marathoner, who meets another man of Palestinian descent. And being that they're both in a foreign land, find kinship in their shared brotherhood. And lastly, Jameson Bachman, a New York City lawyer in Philadelphia on business for a case. He'll be in for a little while, but here's a wad of cash and I'm ready to move in right away. Now with each of us we could say, well, some of these sound suspicious, some of them too good to be true. And of course, there'd be no docuseries if you weren't correct. But it's the how they got away with it that's important here, that your push-up game would come into play. Because even though on the outside presented Dorothea was this elderly woman, in fact she was about a decade younger than she presented, and took on the mannerisms, took on the dress, the schedule, the habits of a woman much older than herself, and presented to the world that idea of the harmless granny. Meanwhile, she had one heck of a life. You never knew who was living next door to you, let me tell you. Because Granny was, well, using tenants, these individuals who were either homeless or in a behavioral health institute but had been thrown out. She would use them for their Social Security checks And once they were secured, it seems she would dispose of them in the garden. And I only say that way to put off YouTube's censorship. Do watch, but watch with caution. Yes. Meanwhile, not going into Mr. Joy and what he did, but after he came under suspicion with the police, he turned on a brand new accent, using the biases of the police against them. Two ways. One, if they can't speak to him or it's very frustrating, they're likely or more likely to give up. And we as English speakers are kind of conditioned to thinking of ourselves as superior for some reason if someone doesn't speak our language clearly. Now, a lot of languages could be guilty of this. I just know in English we are specifically, especially in the United States, guilty of this. And so on the one hand, you can look at him as dumb, and on the other hand, you can look at him as a nuisance. But either way, it kept the police at bay for a while, until he, in fact, slipped up, and in one of the silliest of ways. And then in the case of Jameson Bachman, he was a New York lawyer, or at least that was the story. Turns out he was a serial squatter, and had been doing it all up and down the East Coast. He knew the law very well. He knew how to manipulate the system. And once he would move in, that would be it. He would be in a permanent non-paying tenant until eviction and all these other things could happen. But the interesting part of this, and the one case which really stood out to me, was the case of Yusuf Kader, here on the screen right now. Because part of his game, part of his shtick to one of the people that he was conning was that he was, in fact, a Palestinian marathoner. And as such, ooh, I was wondering why my music went out. And as such, he preyed upon another Palestinian national who was living in the same country. I think they were in Denmark, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody let us know in the comments. I don't remember. I think they were in Denmark. Oh, no, they were in South America at the time, right? I believe so. Let us know down in the comments. I'm thinking off of memory. I think one of them happens. Something happened in Denmark that I watched recently. But it wasn't this. This was somewhere else. Let us know in the comments. I could look it up, obviously, but I'm going to let you people get involved with me here. But the thing about Yusuf, what was interesting, is that when we met the man he would ultimately swindle out of money, Yusuf used the man's nationality, his patriotism, his love of country against him, right? And that is where the push-up game comes in. Because it's at this point that we have to realize that in each of these cases, whether it be the granny who looks and seems utterly harmless, trying to get the buds back here, or the granny that seems utterly harmless, or the young Palestinian running for his country, running for his nation, feeding and manipulating an individual. Oh, my earbuds died. That's why they're dead. That's why the music stopped. Taking advantage of an individual because of his patriotism. These were stereotypes, limitations that we as people, that these individuals, and we in general, put on ourselves, looking. When the folks took advantage of the stereotypes that were created in mind, they took advantage of the fact that stereotypes keep us looking outward, keeping us looking at others. If we're not looking at others, then we can't look, in a sense, if we are looking at others, I'll say, and we're not looking within, ultimately, how can we tell what we're seeing in the other person if we don't look at what we ourselves are expressing? So like we discussed last week, if I see behavior that I don't like, that really gets under my skin, there's a good bet that it reminds me of something that I do to some degree. Sometimes it is just a bad memory, but that is the explanation as to why it's such a thing. When that isn't the explanation, when it's not a bad memory, when it's not tied to a trauma, well then why does it get under your skin then? And what we may often find is that there is some reflection of ourselves in that which we don't like. So we see something about ourselves, something about the biggest illusions that we hold, the ones that we ourselves believe, that we have created for ourselves. I'm Team Marvel, so I have to do this. I'm a Raelian, so I can only exchange gifts in New Mexico. I'm a Cowboys fan, so I have to live in the past century, lest no joy be found. I know I beat up on my cowboy fan brothers and sisters, but in all fairness, they deserve it. So adopting stereotypes to oneself also can imprison one as well. Again, my Cowboys fans. Decades and decades of false hope and a desperate belief in push-ups done long ago. But seriously, what beliefs do we have about ourselves that have nothing to do with who we are? What beliefs do we have about others that have nothing to do with who they are, that you had to get around in order to get to know? It's kind of like having a cat. If you've never had a cat, cats have a reputation. If you've had a cat, you know that only about half of the reputation is true. Which half depends on the cat, but only about half of it is true. Which parts of the halves are true? But let's go a little deeper than that. If you were to take, let's say, a Japanese family goes to France and adopts a baby, but raises the baby in Japan, that baby, that person, that child, as an adult, is going to be Japanese in every single way except looks, assuming they are ethnically French, whatever that means. Would French stereotypes, European stereotypes, or Japanese stereotypes be better in categorizing this person? But which ones would people choose, generally speaking, right off the bat? And so that misconception, though in this case I'm making it very extreme, these tiny misconceptions, these tiny boxes that we put folks in, leaves us susceptible, one, to missing out on the world, two, to being taken advantage of, because ultimately the biggest illusion that we have is to ourselves. I am this, so I must act like that. I am that, so I must act like this. I participate in this thing, so I must do these events. That's a thing. That's a thing a lot of us have. But it doesn't mean they don't hold us back. Think about if it were 2,000 years ago. No matter how barbaric you might see the Romans today, if you lived 2,000 years ago, if I lived out 2,000 years ago, we would be walking from the Colosseum hand in hand in our whitest togas and most beautiful Sunday best. And our kids would be walking with us. And they would be exhausted from cheering the Christians being fed to lions all day in the Colosseum. And they'd ask, can we come back next week and see more Christians fed to lions? And you would reply, only if you behaved yourself. To say otherwise, if you were a Roman in those times, is one of the ways that your modern self lies to who you are. To say that you wouldn't fall in the same traps, essentially the same majorities or minorities, given your circumstances now, is disingenuous to ourselves in many ways. It holds us back, letting our own illusions get in the way of how we filter life. What does that mean for the decisions that we make on poorly purchased stereotypes or on badly researched information due to those same stereotypes? And I'm using this word universally, not necessarily about a person or a people, but in general, because one can stereotype oneself in the same way. And how do you get around the stereotypes? Well, we ask what happens if we don't. If we don't put ourselves in the other person's shoes. We don't think down the lines and consider many of the impacts and events that words or actions could have in that situation. And that ultimately leads to Will Smith slapping you in the face. Ladies, lovelies, and gents. We've come full circle. Whether we're talking about the squatters considering the desperation of their victims? Of course they did. They did so, and they exploited it. They saw the desperation within themselves. Desperate, one and all of the squatters, for either money or room and board, and took some pretty extreme, by our judgment and standards, methods in order to secure one of those fundamental necessities we all like to point to. To understand that to choose a different path might result in something like homelessness, which to that person would be worse. Their desperation can then be recognized in someone else's Craigslist ad. In applying the pressure, one's boundaries, if one is desperate, can't go up as fast because there's this nag of need in the background. So if you know desperation, you can see it in another. Yes, you can exploit it, but you can also soothe it. It can go either way. So now, did Chris Rock consider the outcome of his joke? Only insofar as exploiting it for a laugh. Even in the delivery, he was unsteady and unsure. It was one of those I'm not sexist, but situations. I don't think he considered the slew of factors we, just on our little mindful podcast, brought up today, of using the movie, of what it means for a woman to shave her head in our modern society and to wear it naturally. No wig. A lot of guys can't even do that. Toupees and hair plugs and all sorts of crazy stuff, yeah? But in my closing vibe today, who I really want to talk about is Will Smith. Because these actions, while I'm not going to necessarily condone violence, this showed me a side of him I don't think we've ever seen. Changed the way I looked at him. Because what I saw in him is what I have seen in so many people, what we've all seen in so many people since the quarantines kicked in. His journey is different, mind you, but whatever he lost over these last 2 years, whatever he experienced, he felt it and is still feeling it. They are still living through it. And what we watched was a man who was at conflict with victory during what seems to be that time of loss and struggle for him and his family. And so he talked about a call to a higher purpose, a call so many of you have heard in the last 2 years. A call to serve, a call to help for change, whether it be yourself, family, something larger. In each of these ideas, in each of these thoughts, in each of these desires is this desire to have a more authentic you come forward. expressed from the point of view of an actor. The pain and the process of life expressed through an actor. We like to say, oh, they have money, therefore they don't have problems. And yes, they have the ability to fix problems that people without money don't. Or can't. Can't. I think I meant to say don't have the ability to. But that doesn't mean that they don't mourn, that they don't feel depression, that hard times don't come across. They don't have disappointment. They are not they. They are us, human beings, you and I. They are a part of this journey, a part of our journey. And so as he tearfully spoke about this draw, this pull, and a resistance, this Garden of Gethsemane moment of almost not wanting to heed the call, to the journey, the hero's journey, as it were. And ultimately accepting it. What it shows is so many of us came alive in the last few years. So many of us saw through a lot of the illusions that we had built up around ourselves and had been built up around us. They were necessary for us to push ourselves out of bed and sacrifice our health and our time and our relationships to the pursuit of, if we're still after it at this point, we're certainly questioning what it is that we were pursuing. And that call, and with many of us being faced with mortality in a real way, both around us and at risk ourselves, it wakes you up. Life becomes fragile and therefore precious. Authenticity, feeling and living in a way that is fulfilling, comes to the forefront. And that is so much different than the world we used to live in. And so many of us are feeling that call to something greater, something bigger than ourselves. And many people, let us not forget, who would levy the do as I say, not as I do, well, the doers that we're busy doing now want to do on a grand level. And the sayers, they never did enough to speak a bigger game. And I wonder if that's where it's coming from. The cry of all of us feeling held back for artificial reasons. Artificial and unnecessary reasons. And that call, that cry to do something more, do something better, is breaking the chains of that artificiality? I don't know. Tell us in the comments. But that was the feeling I got as I watched him deliver that very tearful and soulful speech. Now, I know the big story is about the slap. But if you watched it, like I said, I don't condone it, and I'm disappointed it happened. Am I mad at Will? Nah. Is Chris lucky it didn't go further? Yeah. Thank you for joining me on the ChiCast today. I'm your voice of mindfulness, Marcus Julian Carbo. And if you want to burn a little midnight oil in the comments section, do so by telling me some of the stereotypes about others and yourself you've discovered and let go over time. Did something happen later? Did something happen which changed your perspective? Or did you learn a piece of information, have an experience internally which turned a light bulb on? And by all stereotypes, I mean all stereotypes. Cats, cowboys, fans, cows, vacation planners, travel agents we used to call them, right? Vacation planners. Kids these days. Let me know in the comments, as always. And then follow us on Facebook and TikTok at With Marcus, and on Twitter and IG at With_Marcus. And then, of course, join these amazing people over on Patreon. And allow me to say thank you to them for being the first to join the community while we get the lights just right. And we hit our patron goals, and helping us hit our patron goals. And as we do so, we'll add more benefits, behind the scene access alongside classes, some after hours things, and deeper dives into your own mindful fitness adventure. As always, links are in the description below. But remember, no matter what goes on, the answer to life's greatest question is almost always more push-ups. Until next time, peace and love.